The sun hangs low over the cul-de-sac, casting golden streaks across neatly manicured lawns. The air is thick with the scent of fresh-cut grass and barbecue smoke wafting from a few backyards. Kids ride their bikes, their laughter ringing through the quiet suburban street. It's an evening like any other, calm, predictable, safe. I tug on Max's leash as we stroll past the houses, the rhythmic click of his nails tapping against the sidewalk. Max, my 90-pound Rottweiler mix, is the definition of a gentle giant. His deep brown eyes shine with warmth, his sleek black fur glistens under the fading sunlight. The most aggressive thing about him? His unrelenting need for belly rubs. I pass by my neighbor, Mrs. Chong, who waves from her porch. Evening, Chris. Max behaving himself? She teases, throwing him a treat from her pocket. As always, I chuckle, giving Max a pat on the head. Most people around here know Max. They know me. I've lived in this neighborhood for 6 years, long enough to see families come and go, long enough to learn which neighbors will smile at me and which will pretend I don't exist. It's a predominantly white suburb, and as a black man, I felt the undercurrents of tension more times than I care to count. Nothing overt, just the little things. The too long stares. The hushed conversations. The way some people lock their car doors when I walk by, and then there's her, Karen. Real name, Deborah Jensen. But she's got the classic Karen starter pack, platinum bob, yoga pants, an entitled scowl that could curdle milk. She moved in last year and wasted no time establishing herself as the self-appointed ruler of the block. First, she complained about teenagers loitering on the sidewalk. Then she called the HOA over someone's unsightly garden gnome. And now lately she's been watching me. Every time I take Max out, I feel her eyes. Peeking through her blinds. Lingering on her porch with crossed arms. Yesterday, I even caught her snapping a picture of us. It's subtle, but I know where this is going. Tonight is no different. As I turn the corner near her house, there she is standing on her lawn, arms folded tight, lips pursed in disapproval. I can already feel the weight of whatever nonsense she's about to spew. Max wags his tail. Big mistake. Karen flinches like he just pulled out a switchblade. That thing shouldn't be off a leash, she snaps. I hold up the thick leash in my hand. He's literally on a leash. Her eyes dart to Max, then back to me. He looks dangerous. I sigh. Here we go. Before I can respond, she whips out her phone and starts dialing. I hear it before I see it. 911, what's your emergency? Max leans against my leg, sensing my tension. I exhale slowly. This is about to get ugly. I freeze, my fingers tightening around Max's leash. Karen's voice is sharp, cutting through the calm evening like a jagged blade. Yes, I need officers immediately, she says into her phone, pacing in tight circles on her pristine lawn. There's a dangerous dog loose in the neighborhood. It's threatening me. Max tilts his head, ears perked, oblivious to the chaos brewing around him. Ma'am, he's not, I start, but she throws up a hand like she's warding off an attack. Stay back, she shrieks, loud enough to make heads turn. Across the street, Mrs. Chong steps onto her porch. Brow furrowed. A few houses down, a man peeks through his blinds. The world around me slows, the weight of a familiar tension settling on my chest. I know this game. It's not about Max. It never was. It's about me. Karen's eyes flick between me and my dog, her lips curling in disgust. She's not afraid, she's performing. Every exaggerated flinch, every deliberate step backward, it's all part of the show. She's counting on the fact that when the cops arrive, they won't see a responsible dog owner taking his pet for a walk. They'll see a black man with an aggressive animal. The words she's using, dangerous, threatening, aren't for the dispatcher. They're for the officers responding. She's planting the seed, and I know exactly how this story usually ends. I glance down at Max, who's now sitting at my feet, tail thumping lazily against the pavement. He's the picture of calm, completely unaware that his existence has just been weaponized against me. I take a step forward, my voice low and controlled. Karen, you need to stop. She gasps, clutching her chest like I just lunged at her. Oh my God, he's approaching me. Send someone now. My jaw tightens. I could argue. I could shout. But I won't. I've seen what happens when people who look like me lose their temper in situations like this. I will not give her what she wants. Instead, I pull out my own phone and hit record. Karen's eyes widen slightly when she notices, but she doesn't stop. Yes, he's filming me. I don't feel safe, she cries, voice shaking with manufactured fear. The sirens are faint at first, just a distant wail in the night. But they're getting closer. Too fast. Too soon. My stomach knots. This isn't just a noise complaint or an HOA dispute. Karen called in an emergency, and now officers are racing toward me, expecting to find a violent man with an out-of-control beast. Karen folds her arms, a smug smile ghosting across her lips. She thinks she's won, but she has no idea what's coming. The wail of sirens grows louder, slicing through the night air. Blue and red lights flicker down the street, casting eerie reflections on polished SUVs and freshly painted fences. My grip on Max's leash tightens as two patrol cars pull up, tires screeching to a stop. The doors fly open. Two officers step out, hands hovering near their holsters. I don't move. I don't breathe. I keep my phone raised, recording every second. Karen's crocodile tears start immediately. Oh, thank God you're here. I was so scared. He was coming at me with that beast. She gestures frantically at Max, who, bless his oblivious heart, wags his tail, thinking this is some kind of game. One officer, a stocky white guy with a buzz cut, narrows his eyes at me. Sir, step away from the dog. I exhale slowly. He's on a leash. Sitting. Not moving. The second officer, a Latina woman with sharp, assessing eyes, glances at Max. Her posture is more relaxed. She's actually looking at the situation. The first cop, though, is locked onto me like I'm a ticking bomb. Put the phone down, he orders. No, I say, keeping my voice even. I have every right to record this. Karen gasps. See? He's aggressive. He won't even listen to the police. I clench my jaw. I'm not being aggressive. I'm standing still, holding my dog and documenting what's happening. Mrs. Chong steps forward from her porch. That's true. I saw everything. The dog didn't do anything. Karen spins on her, eyes flashing. You didn't hear how he threatened me. Mrs. Chong folds her arms. All I heard was you screaming. Karen's face twitches, but she recovers fast. I felt threatened, and that's all that matters. Officers, I have a right to feel safe in my own neighborhood. And there it is. The privilege play. The coded language. She's not accusing me of anything concrete. No actual attack, no real threat. Just her feelings. And in a world like this, her feelings could be enough to get me arrested, or worse. The buzzcut cop turns back to me. Sir, we need to check the dog for aggression. I blink. Excuse me. He gestures toward his partner. She's trained in canine behavior. If you just hand over the leash, absolutely not. Karen lets out a dramatic gasp. Oh, you see? He's refusing. Probably trained that thing to attack on command. I feel my pulse pounding in my ears. She's escalating, and I know exactly what she's trying to do, back me into a corner until I react, then use my reaction against me. I swallow my frustration and turn to the female officer. You want to assess him? Fine. But I'm holding the leash. She hesitates, then nods. That's reasonable. Karen's mouth falls open, but before she can object, the officer crouches down, extending her hand toward Max. He sniffs it. Licks her fingers. Then, in true Max fashion, flops onto his back and kicks his legs in the air. The officer grins. Yeah, he's dangerous all right. Might lick someone to death. Karen's face darkens. That thing, the officer straightens. That dog is showing zero signs of aggression. Buzzcut doesn't look happy, but he steps back. Then we're done here. Karen's face twists with fury. You're done. He filmed me. He intimidated me. You wasted police time, I say, finally allowing the anger to seep into my voice. You called 911 for this? Her mouth flaps like a dying fish. That thing is still a danger. The Latina officer sighs. Ma'am, if you call emergency services again over a false threat, you will be charged with filing a false report. Karen recoils like she's been slapped. It should end there, but Karen isn't one to lose. Her lips pressed together, her mind working. And then I want to press charges, she says, her voice dripping with manufactured victimhood. My stomach drops. The officers exchange glances. On what grounds? Karen lifts her chin. I felt threatened. And I know he filmed me without my consent. That's harassment. I tighten my grip on my phone. This is spiraling fast. Karen thinks she can twist the law to her advantage, but she has no idea who she's up against. I stare at Karen, my grip on Max's leash tightening as she squares her shoulders, eyes alight with victory. The officers hesitate, but I can already see it, the flicker of doubt in Buzzcut's expression. He's considering it. Sir, he says, voice clipped. Turn off the recording and hand over your phone. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. This is what she wants. She's banking on me getting angry, raising my voice, making a scene. Anything she can use to flip the script. Karen folds her arms, a smug little smile creeping onto her lips. You heard the officer. I tilt my head, keeping my voice steady. And what crime am I being accused of? Harassment, she snaps. You filmed me without my permission. That's illegal. The Latina officer, still standing near Max, sighs. No, it isn't. Karen's head whips toward her. Excuse me. I take my shot. In public spaces, anyone can legally record, especially when they feel threatened. And considering you called the police on me for no reason, I had every right to document it. Karen's face twitches, but she doubles down. He approached me aggressively. I felt unsafe. And my privacy was violated, not how the law works. I cut in smoothly. But you did call 911 with a false report. And that is a crime. The Latina officer nods. He's right. If we pursue anything, it'd be a charge against you. Karen's nostrils flare. But I let the silence stretch, watching her unravel. She was so sure she had one. So sure the system would fall in line for her. But the cracks are showing. Still, she isn't done yet. Karen whirls toward Buzzcut, her voice laced with desperation. Officer, he threatened me. I was terrified. That dog is dangerous, and just like that, I see my opening, because Karen forgot one very important thing. I turn my phone around, tapping the screen to replay my footage. Karen's voice fills the air. That thing shouldn't be off a leash. He looks dangerous. Oh my God, he's approaching me. The officers go still, listening. Karen's face drains of color. Then comes the moment that seals it, her own words, damning and clear as day. I felt threatened, and that's all that matters. The Latina officer looks up at Karen, her expression unreadable. Sounds like you weren't actually in danger. Just felt like it. Karen stammers. That's not fair. He's twisting my words. No, I say quietly. I'm playing them. Buzzcut exhales sharply, rubbing his forehead. Ma'am, I strongly suggest you drop this. Karen sputters, her composure crumbling. You're just going to let him get away with this? What kind of police are you? The kind that doesn't arrest innocent people based on feelings, the Latina officer replies, unimpressed. And then, the final nail in the coffin, Mrs. Chong, still standing on her porch, clears her throat. I recorded everything too. If you need a second angle. Karen's breath hitches. Now she's trapped. She thought she was the director of this little performance, but now the audience has turned against her. And she knows it. Her eyes dart between the officers, searching for a way out, for one last lifeline. But none come, and then something ugly crosses her face. A flicker of pure, unfiltered rage. She turns to me, her lips curling back. You think you've won? She hisses. You people always think you're so smart. The words land like a slap. Buzzcut stiffens. The Latina officer's mouth presses into a thin line, and just like that, Karen digs her own grave. A slow smirk spreads across my face. You just said that on a police officer's body cam. Karen's entire body goes rigid. Her mouth parts, but no words come out. The officers exchange glances. That's enough, Buzzcut says coldly. Ma'am, turn around. Karen blanches. What? No. But it's too late, the tables have turned. Karen stumbles back, her face twisting in panic as the officers close in. Wait. No, this isn't happening. She whirls on Buzzcut, her voice shrill. Officer, you don't understand. I'm the victim here. He provoked me. He intimidated me. Buzzcut's jaw tightens. Ma'am, we have 2 separate recordings of you fabricating a threat. And now you've made a racially charged statement on my body cam. Karen's face twitches. I didn't mean it like that. She lets out a shaky laugh, looking around frantically as if searching for an ally, but the street is silent. Neighbors have gathered on porches, watching with wide eyes. Mrs. Chang's phone is still held high, the red recording light blinking. A man near the corner, someone I recognize from morning jogs, crosses his arms and shakes his head. Karen knows she's losing. Her privilege, her weaponized fear, none of it is working. Her breath comes in short gasps, her mind racing for a way out. I was confused. I really thought I was in danger. He was being aggressive. Buzzcut exhales sharply. Ma'am. His voice is firm. Final. You called 911 under false pretenses. You escalated a situation that never existed. And then you made that comment. Karen's eyes dart to me, full of something almost animalistic. I know that look. It's the look of someone who refuses to accept reality, who still clings to the belief that, somehow, she can twist this to her advantage. Then, like a switch flipping, her entire demeanor changes. She straightens, smoothing her cardigan like she's brushing off dust. A cold smile stretches across her lips. Well, she lifts her chin. I'll be speaking to your superiors. I donate to this department, you know? Buzzcut doesn't react. The Latina officer lets out a short laugh. Oh, you're one of those. Karen glares at her. Excuse me. I mean the type that thinks donating buys them immunity. The officer tilts her head. It doesn't. Karen clenches her fists, her breathing erratic. I have connections. You don't know who you're messing with. And then, as if on cue, a third vehicle rolls onto the scene. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows. Karen goes still, the door swings open, and a tall man in a suit steps out, his expression unreadable. But the second I see him, I know this is about to get so much worse for her, because I do know who he is. So does Karen. Her mouth parts slightly, her entire body stiffening. The man glances at the officers. I heard there was an incident, he says, voice calm but authoritative. Buzzcut nods. Yes, sir. We've got body cam footage, multiple witness statements, and video evidence confirming that this woman, he gestures toward Karen, called in a false emergency, escalated a non-threat, and made racially charged remarks. The man sighs. Sounds about right. He turns to me, offering a polite nod. Apologies for the trouble, Mr. Carter. Karen chokes on a breath. You know him? The man barely spares her a glance. Yes. He's a friend of my wife's. Karen's lips press together so tightly they turn white. I don't understand. The man finally looks at her, his face impassive. Let me make it clear then. I'm the district attorney. The blood drains from Karen's face. I also, he continues, folding his arms, live 3 houses down. Karen's knees almost buckle. This is my neighborhood, he says, his voice measured but cold. And I've personally seen you pull the same nonsense before. I let it slide. I thought maybe you were just an overzealous busybody. But this. He shakes his head. This is a whole new level. Karen tries to regain footing. I was just looking out for the community. His brows lift. By making false police reports? By endangering someone with baseless accusations? Karen's mouth opens but nothing comes out. Let me explain what's going to happen, the DA continues. First, you're going to be formally charged for making a false 911 call. Karen gasps. No. You can't. I can, he corrects. And I will. Secondly, this department, he gestures toward the officers, will be reviewing every other complaint you've made in the past year. Because if there's a pattern of this kind of behavior, you'll be looking at even more legal trouble. Karen is visibly shaking now, and lastly, the DA takes a step forward, lowering his voice. I'll be making sure the HOA knows exactly what kind of liability you are. If they're smart, they'll cut ties before they find themselves in a lawsuit because of you. Karen's breath is coming in sharp, panicked bursts. She knows she's done for. Her gaze darts around, desperate for an escape, for someone, anyone, to back her up, but the neighbors are still watching. The officers aren't stopping the DA. And Mrs. Chang, still recording. Karen stumbles back, eyes welling up with tears. This isn't fair. I felt threatened. That's not a crime. The DA levels her with an icy stare. No. But trying to ruin a man's life over a feeling? That is. Karen's world crumbles around her, and for the first time she realizes there's no escaping this. Karen is still shaking her head, lips trembling as the reality of her downfall sinks in. You can't do this to me. Her voice is barely a whisper now, stripped of its earlier arrogance. Buzzcut exhales. Ma'am, turn around. She flinches, but there's nowhere to run. The Latina officer steps forward, and with mechanical efficiency she cuffs Karen's wrists behind her back. The moment the cold steel clicks, a collective hush falls over the neighborhood. Karen never thought this day would come. You're making a mistake, she shrieks, suddenly finding her voice again. I'll sue. I'll have your jobs. The DA folds his arms. You made the mistake, Mrs. Thompson. Her knees almost give out. Wait, she gasps, looking wildly at the crowd. Someone say something. You know me. I was only trying to keep us safe. But no one comes to her defense. Instead, I see something shift in my neighbors' faces. Recognition. A dawning realization that they had let Karen get away with this kind of behavior for far too long. Mrs. Chang lowers her phone, shaking her head. No, Karen. We know what you are. Karen's breath catches. The officers guide her toward the squad car, her feet dragging as if she can physically resist the weight of her own consequences. She turns to me one last time, eyes burning with hatred. You think you've won? She hisses. People like you, I arch a brow. Careful. You're still on camera. She slams her mouth shut. The officers load her into the back of the cruiser. As the door slams shut, her face is still twisted in disbelief. Like she can't comprehend how the story she scripted turned against her, because for once, it didn't work. The cars pull away, sirens off, just a quiet procession of justice rolling down the street, and just like that, she's gone. Along. Heavy silence lingers in the air. The tension that had gripped the neighborhood for years, silent, unspoken, has finally snapped. I exhale, glancing down at Max. He wags his tail lazily, completely unbothered. Guess you are dangerous, I murmur, scratching behind his ears. Took down a whole HOA tyrant with a single belly rub. Mrs. Chang chuckles. Others smile, murmuring amongst themselves. Some shift uncomfortably, their gazes darting away as if ashamed they hadn't spoken up sooner. Then, to my surprise, the man from the jogging path, Tyrone, steps forward. He extends a hand. That was long overdue, he says. Glad you stood your ground. I shake his hand, nodding. A ripple effect begins. Others offer hesitant apologies, quiet acknowledgments. I should have spoken up sooner. I didn't realize how bad she was. If you ever need backup, let us know. It doesn't erase the past, but it's a start. The DA claps a hand on my shoulder. If she causes more trouble from jail, let me know. But I doubt the HOA will let her anywhere near this place again. I glance down the street, where Karen's perfect little kingdom has officially crumbled. She won't be back. The neighborhood is different now. Lighter. As if a weight has finally lifted. I turn to Max, crouching down. Come on, buddy. Let's go home. He licks my face, oblivious to the storm he just survived, and as I walk back to my house, head held high, I realize, this time, justice didn't just bark. It bit back.